Hello, everybody. Mike Levin on May 8th, 2023. Oh my goodness, time flies. I haven't shot many of these talking head videos recently, but I certainly have in my car. And I'm going to try and do more of them as the mood strikes. And right now, I was putting a poem in one of my blog posts, and it occurred to me that I never really memorized how to strip trailing spaces. So, a little poem I wrote. I'm building better blogging to replace a bygone era where your CMS is flogging you to take up something clearer. So you catalog your cattails in one file for the hashing, using YAML for the data, and then Jekyll for the lashing. So, as you can see, I've got all these trailing spaces, and I could go delete them. And I even started thinking of macros to do it, start recording a macro, jump to the last, blah, blah, blah. But it occurs to me this is a sweet spot for regular expression. And everyone is saying that, oh, these generative AI things like Bing and ChatGPT are great for the RegEx. So here's one where it says, hey, you can put it in your Vim RC so that every time you save it does it. But like, no, thank you. I don't want to trim trailing spaces automatically everywhere because I'm actually going to be putting trailing spaces. After I strip them out here, I'm going to put 2 spaces after every line, which is an indication of, to Jekyll, to the static site generator I'm using that's built into GitHub. It needs to know to not line wrap even when you're doing quotes, because a quote could be just as easily intended to line wrap as it is to be poetry style. So to get poetry style, we first strip out the line, the spaces at the end of each line. And to do that, I'm going to use the RegEx, and I'm just going to do it out of my head. Having looked at this, right, it's not out of my head anymore. It's not out of this anymore because I looked at it and understood what they were trying to tell me. And I'm like, oh, okay. So when you're looking for any number of an occurrence of an object, you have to backslash the plus sign. I don't know if you can see that, but let me zoom in on that. The things that I see when I look at this, it's like, oh, okay, so for visual select mode, you got your %S. They're showing me %S for whole page select mode, but I don't want that. I want visual select mode, so I'm editing in my mind already. Oh, look at that. OBS is overloaded. I'll have to consider that, but for now, let's just forge on ahead, and I'll jump to it. Maybe it thinks I'm rambling too much. I ramble too much. So we go into visual select mode, subject of another video perhaps, and then I hit % to go into command mode. Or is it command? It's EX. It's command EX mode. So I get the words confused. There's 3 modes in VI, Vim, NeoVim, and I'm going into one of them by hitting the colon. And so now I can issue commands. One of those commands is S for search and replace. You do a / and it says apply to everything in the visual selection. I'm going to do a search and replace. So I want to do the search and replace of spaces, which happens to be \S. I know that special code. Now the highlighting is strange. That should actually be including all this stuff to the right, but I guess the way NeoVim is programmed, it's like, we'll just show you the first match maybe, something like that. But you put the \ for plus because it says any number of times, so it can match on a single space or it can match on all the multiple spaces. Now here's the magic. You want that to go to the point of the hard return, which in RegEx is the $sign. So I now have selected all the trailing spaces that I want to replace, and I put another / because it's what I'm going to replace it with, space, and it visually shows you what you're going to get. Now I want one more / This is almost out of habit. I just do GCC, which means global confirm or something like that. It's not really global in visual select. It wouldn't go outside my selection, but that makes sure it all applies in there as you see it. I have replaced all the trailing white space with the 2 spaces that are required for properly formatting poetry. Now you might think, where has Mike been during all this time? And I had to refactor my tools because AI. Here is a post that I made in which I am talking about these things. I can't have more than one post right now that is not expanded. So I give it a title tag, and there's so many possible topics here. So really, I think I'm going to zero in on the search and replace. I talk about Midjourney. This is a lot of subject matter. It'll be interesting to see what AI selects as the subject matter for this, and it'll probably key off my my title selection a little bit. So using RegEx in NeoVim to format Markdown quotes with 2 trailing slashes. Now that's actually the subject of this video more than it is this post, but we'll see what AI does with it, OpenAI in particular, by doing my macro now. So I just hit, well, instead of hitting that, I'm going to go to another screen because I'm kind of in debug mode. So I'll scroll over Jupyter Notebook, over the browser, and then into where I have the command set up. And you can see the last time I did this was this Lex Luthor post. And I'll do it again. What you're going to see is my YAML chop, because technically it's YAML chop /chop.py, blog slice and dice system, journal, publisher, call it what you will. But it goes through this process and it encounters a post where it needs some OpenAI writing for a alternative headline to the title I wrote, for a meta description, and for extracting keywords. Well, what is that headline, description, and keywords? Well, there it is right there. So it chose as the headline the journey with Midjourney. That's what it was originally intended to be, until I switched because of this poem and whitespace thing. Learn how to use regular expressions in NeoVim to format Markdown quotes with 2 trailing slashes. Discover how to create an automatic backup of your journey in the data folder and how to use Vim commands to add, delete, and edit text. Get started with Midjourney AI with a paid account, blah, 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 and the keywords that are extracted. And then it says, oh, I would have published this, but review your changes. So you remember a moment ago, I was just writing this blog post over here in NeoVim. Well, here it is again, but now with the OpenAI descriptions. You just saw NeoVim detect that the file had changed on Drive and filled in fields that were not there before. All I provided was this and this. And by providing a title tag, that is my release system. That said, well, it didn't really release it. It's my staging for release. It said, have OpenAI write these lines, which you can't see the whole thing, but all I have to do is hit function F5 where I have my macro for switching between line wrap mode or not. And then, I could read the description and the keywords and see the choices it made. And so if I like it, I might edit this, but for the sake of the video, I just go back over here and I run my script one more time. And now that it's not going to find anything requiring the AI completion of the post, the expanding it out with these extra YAML fields, YAML chop. It's a Markdown basically, but with YAML on top of it as header matter, front matter, as the Jekyll people say. It's basically the Jekyll publishing system, which normally uses all these little text files all over the place, but I put it in one giant text file, journal.md, and I got a lot to tell you about that. This is the new process of it being sort of scanned and interrogated and then chopped. This is the part where we chop the YAML. You always have to think of it with Peter Gabriel's voice. That's a very important part of the process. And every number it's spitting out represents 10 blog posts that it chopped into the smaller Jekyll-friendly version. And yeah, then there's some drafts. You can keep things in draft in the system without publishing it, but still rendering it as HTML with the style torn out, with the, you know, all the stuff that you do with CSS not in there, so that it's copy-paste friendly into copy-paste friendly into things like Google Docs and Microsoft Word. And now you can see that Git is adding any new category pages that I might have generated in this process. It's backing up everything that's in the data directory, which is literally backups to the you know, all the YAML chop stuff. I also use SQLite databases here and there, and I drop copies of the journal in there for sort of an undo thing. But the posts one took the longest to add because that is all the posts. I was going to say a lot of changes. You're going to see once I really start pushing it, you're going to see thousands of changes have been made to the repo. I'm going to try and trim that down to only being those things that have really changed. But for the sake of expediency, I wipe out the whole post directory and I rebuild it so that there's not, you know, accumulating cruft from maybe old journal posts I don't want in there. There's more elegant ways to do it, you know, set intersection stuff. Maybe that'll be an item on a to-do list. But here's the long portion, and it's also quite revealing, where it actually does the commit, takes all the changes in the repo, and it says, you know, commit this to the repo, more than just adding things. These are add. This is committing all the changes that just occurred to my blog, and then which is really just the addition of one new blog post, but nonetheless, git commit can take a long time if you wipe out a directory and rebuild it. And then after that, it's going to do the git push, and you're going to see just the you know, the create for the page I just created. Right, it goes into the post directory. There's the URL for it. Trailing slashes. Oh, I didn't mean that. It's supposed to be trailing spaces, not slashes. And changing URLs is a pain because I use that for the primary key. But nonetheless, I'll let you see how this works, and I'll clean up my mistake on my own time. You can see here under GitHub, it knows that I just pushed a change, and it went to orange for it processing a change. And I'll give you a little before and after. If I go to my site, you'll see that I now have my most recent posts here, and oh, it pushed out the old Discord one. Oh, that's interesting. That is the thing I was really fixing that made me go back, because it found nuns. Okay, this is a little debugging thing that will go away on this publish, but I have to note that if I have two things that require the OpenAI writing, the second thing has a problem. The second thing does not publish correctly, or prematurely publishes with nuns. That's going to be a 404. Oh, it's not a 404. It published it with the nuns as the filled in fields. Okay. Yeah, I got to fix that. That's one of my high priority to-dos, which is why I have not released this whole YAML chop system to the public. While we're here in GitHub, I'll just show you that github.com/me, and the repo would be YAML chop. I don't even have a README on this yet, because I just don't want it released to the general public until I have some of these details worked out a little better. But if you drill down into this chop.py, you'll see Alice, who looks a lot better in the journal itself. If I go over here, it's not really the journal, it's my second buffer in NeoVim where I keep it. So this is starting to talk about it. So my README is kind of developing at the top of the actual program code itself. And as we scroll down here, you see all the stuff that is my YAML chop chop, YAML chop chop, YAML generators, the OpenAI, and I'll go over in the different prompts that are in there, the flow control, the parts of the flow control, and then after the things that you call in the flow control are done, we go into the helper wasteland, all these little helper functions that you never refer to directly in flow control because they're referred to as sub components of flow control. So what do I mean by flow control? Well, when I go into debug mode, I just remove the git push. I'm doing that all the time. Oh, speaking of a git push, let's see if that's done, and I'll do a before and after. Well, clearly the git push is done, and the rendering is occurring here, and it's green all the way through, which means we've got a before and after. Welcome to my journal. This bad one here, this one, which was my most recent. We do a refresh. The bad one is gone, and the most recent is now this one that has the word slashes at the end, but I have to change that too. And there's my instructions on how I started to deal with this bug that I encountered. Here's my poem that's somewhat formatted, and you can see I missed 2 spaces at the end of one of those things. So we go back to poem, and I find the line that didn't get the 2 spaces. That would be this one. And there you have it. I'll end there because, that kind of brought it to the end, right to the point of seeing a little mistake that I made in the process. If you don't put the 2 spaces at the end, you don't get line returns when you're doing poetry as opposed to prose. Because when it's prose, 2 lines at the end should not stop you. Here's my AI written description, meta description, which also becomes a little quote at the top of the article, which I can confirm for you. It is in fact my meta description by viewing page source. Look at this clean HTML. Here is my OpenAI written description, meta tag, my OpenAI provided extracted keywords. And the alternative headline is not really a meta thing. That's down here in the HTML, which is more pleasant to look at. Oh, yeah, I don't even know if I include my alternative headline here. That's an interesting thing. I should make more use of that. And there's the automatic categorization under the different categories the blog post belongs to. Here's my previous next arrows. If you hit previous, you can step through there's just so much to tell you. I won't bore you all with it on this one, but this gives you a little preview. Oh, this is not right. That probably is from needs a refresh. Got to start. No, there it is. Look at that. Refresh. Okay, I got a little debugging to do and a little bit of pictures to add with Midjourney. Thanks for joining me. See you again soon. And don't forget to subscribe.